everybody. Hello, hello. How y'all doing? Everybody looks so pretty. Welcome to Mothers for Justice and Equality's Mother's Day Luncheon. Now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you, and I like to introduce her a certain way. She's probably going to get me. But, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO and President of Mothers for Justice and Equality, Mrs. Mona Smith.
I don't know why I keep inviting her. I know she's going to do that. Just there's something about it. You're not getting an invitation. But I wanted to thank all of you for coming out today. And it feels so good, right, to be in person. We've been doing a lot of virtual work together, but now we're finally get to see each other. And I feel like we've kind of crossed over, right? And so I'm just grateful. And I'm so happy that we have our new mayor here with us. Mayor Michelle Wu, and we, all of us have known her in her previous role as city councilor, but it's just nice and refreshing to see her as our mayor, and also just to have her in our presence as we have our first Mother's Day gathering. And I'm just going to share a little bit of her bio because sometimes we see people and do we really know all the good work they've done. So Mayor Wu is the mayor of Boston. She is the daughter of immigrants, Boston Public School mom of 2 boys, MBTA commuter, God bless her, and a fierce believer that we can solve our deepest challenges through building community, and we all stand in agreement with her. As the mayor, Michelle is working in coalition to deliver bold, systemic change and make Boston a city for everyone. How about that? Did you ever think like the MBTA was going to be free? I think we just thought the price was going to keep going up, right? So thank you so much, Mayor Wu. Mayor Wu has been a voice for accessibility, transparency, and community engagement in the city's leadership. First elected to Boston City Council in November 2013 at the age of 28. Wow. Wu is the first Asian American woman to serve on the council. In January 2016, she was elected president of the City Council by her colleagues in a unanimous vote, becoming the first woman of color to serve as City Council. As a counselor, Mayor Wu was the lead sponsor of the Boston Paid Parental Leave Ordinance and Healthcare Equity Ordinance prohibiting discrimination based on gender identity, both of which passed unanimously through the council and were signed into law by former Mayor Marty Walsh. She also authored Boston's Communication Access Ordinance, which guarantees translation, interpretation, and assistive technology to access the City of Boston services regardless of English language proficiency or communication disability. Wu got her start in City Hall working for Mayor Thomas Menino as a rapport fellow, law and public policy, where she created the city's first guide to restaurant permitting process from start to finish. She was also a driving force to launch Boston's food truck program. She later served as the statewide constituency director in the U.S. state campaign of her former law professor, Elizabeth Warren. As a former restaurant owner, legal service attorney, and legal guardian for her younger sister, Wu understands firsthand the barriers that families and communities face. She has a background in community advocacy, having worked with Wilmer Hale Legal Service Center in Jamaica Plain, providing legal advice to low-income small business owners, as well as at the medical legal partner at Boston Medical Center on immigration law cases for survivors of domestic violence. In 2016, Wu was honored as one of 10 outstanding young leaders by Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce as part of the Marie Claire magazine New Guard, the 50 most influential women in America. Wu graduated from Harvard College and Law School. She is fluent in Mandarin and Spanish and lives in Roslindale with her husband, Connor, and her son, Blaze and Case. I think we got a good mayor. Without further ado, there you go.
I feel like I need to make a rule that my introductions can only be one sentence. So we share that, Ms. Monalisa.
They told me, but I had to share it all.
So just like how you deserve your full hype up introduction, I still get really uncomfortable and awkward too, because I was never one who, I still get nervous when I'm about to speak. I don't like being the center of attention. I don't like having birthday parties or having people look at me or things like that. So I have had to learn some parts of the job, because in some ways, whether it is Miss Monalisa's leadership, all of your leadership, there are many moments where we don't want to make it about ourselves, but it's powerful for people to see us in these spaces. And so we are here, we're going to claim our space, yes, and we're doing this on behalf of the community. I'm also really honored to be here as well with my counselor, my partner, I'm not going to say the last part yet until it's not officially out, but someone who is running for district attorney as well, City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo, who has been such a champion for our neighborhoods and is that person when I'm super stressed out about how the world feels like it's too much, keeps me going. So thank you, Councilor Arroyo, for your leadership and your advocacy. We're in a really stressful time. Yes. And every milestone that we're celebrating as coming back together for the first time in 2 years, 3 years, is also in some ways a little bit of a triggering event, I think, for so many in our communities, right? We talk about how now we're able to have parades again coming up and festivals and all these annual events that we took a break from for a while because we were so anxious and nervous and grieving and experiencing that loss. For many in our communities, that grief and that loss isn't new, didn't start during the pandemic. And so we have a moment now to be really intentional about how we knit our communities back together. What does it mean to come back together in person, but not just kind of skip over everything that we've collectively experienced, but use that to really inform how we can build our communities in a different way, in a way that actually gets to what so many have been advocating for and fighting for and being told no on for many, many years prior to the pandemic, right? We just launched 3 free bus lines in the city of Boston, the 23, the 28, the 29. And I'll tell you, we're measuring all the things about why this works. We're counting how many people are now being able to get on the bus and how much money they're saving and this and that. But I'll tell you, for me, the most powerful bit of feedback that we've gotten so far from this bus pilot, right? Mayor Janey started it when she was mayor with the 28 bus. We were able to negotiate and change. I had to go all the way up to the White House because they said, you can't test out something like that for more than 6 months. And we said, for 6 months, no one's even going to find out about it being there yet, much less being able to depend on open new businesses and take a new job. And so we really wanted to have 2 full years of this pilot, had to fight and fight and fight, finally got the approvals. And the most powerful bit of feedback from me so far is hearing from residents who say, I finally feel like this city recognizes me and that I'm part of the community. And never in my life growing up here did I imagine that the bus would ever be free, because it was just one thing after another of the burden always being on our residents to make things work and to find a way. I think in some ways you all and MJE really embodies that. When every other system has been broken, not listening, not seeing, our communities, you have found a way to create the spaces, and now this amazing, beautiful space. make sure that, of course, we're providing the services, of course, we're measuring the impact, and we know how many young people are being served by the programming, and mothers and community members. But most importantly of all, it is that feeling of, this is my city.
Yes.
I do belong here, and I am part of this community. And so we need spaces like this for that reason, most of all. I am, in some ways, being a mom is probably the most important thing about me. It's how I see the world. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up, when I go to bed. And some days, as a mom, I am really scared about where we are as a society, as a government, as a democracy. When you have little kids, you kind of live in this strange headspace of you're in the here and now, and you're in the 30 years from now too, right? You're constantly like, okay, are their hands clean? Do they need to go potty? Do they need to, are they happy and fed? But also, what will the world look like as they're stepping into the future? And you all have experienced the unspeakable, have taken that sense of future and promise and possibility to see each one of the young people, each one of our youth as your own. And so I am here just to say I am incredibly grateful for your tenacity, for your inspiration, for your fight. And we will be here with you every step of the way to make sure that no matter where you grow up in Boston, no matter if you found your way here from education or romance or to come back to home after you've been away, that this is your city. This is your city that's going to be safe and healthy and full of opportunity, and we need to do so by following your lead in building up what that community looks like, where everyone is wrapped around with mother's love. So thank you so much for all that you do. I look up to you all and am so, so grateful for your leadership.
Let's give her another.
Before the mayor leaves, if we could do a photo with the mayor and the mothers.
Oh, okay.
And we can do that in our blue room, our library, at the Eileen Harris Library.
Nice.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll introduce. Come on.
I got the best introduction for the mayor.
Send me your bio. I know.
No worries.
I read the whole thing.
I'll do this part. Because we gotta do this right? After the two of us had to go through hype up bio. We're gonna let him get
That's my
away
turn
with
to blush over.
So, I think you all recognize Councilor Arroyo. He's a presence in, and this is your
District, yeah.
This is his district. I live in his district as well in Rosendale, so it's Rosendale, Hyde Park, Mattapan. But more importantly, so many across the city see him as their counselor, even though they don't technically live in the district, because he's often been the voice, fighting to make sure that people who haven't been heard and seen are part of the conversation. I've seen him take on fights to make sure that there's police accountability. I've seen him take on fights to ensure public health and access for students in our schools to have everything that they need. He is of this community, and even in public and private, when we've had our conversations, everything comes from a place of recognizing how much growing up here he's been rooted in this community and wants to give back. And so Councilor Arroyo you're still coaching, right?
Yes.
He's a youth sports coach. He's proud papa to little pups.
Yeah,
And is someone who we can always turn to, shows up no matter where, no matter what time, no matter how risky it is politically to be in a space to do the right thing. And so very proud to serve alongside her.
I'm I'm so grateful to be here in this space. This is what recharges me and what refuels me and what centers me. I'm in a room with a bunch of change makers and a bunch of folks who remind me why I do this, why I go out and spend my days doing this. Thank you, Ms. Monalisa, for creating such a lovely space. I got to tour it. And, you know, I am running now for Suffolk County District Attorney, but before I started ever doing any of this, I went into public defense. And I know that the charge that you have is to address violence. And what I learned in that work, I represented so many people. What I learned in that work is that love goes so much further than fear, so much further. And what we are dealing with often in this society is a society that sees black and brown children and believes that what we need is fear and rules and regulations, and it doesn't give us love or understanding or places to grow. And so the work that you are charged with is work that is so important, but you are so much more successful at getting to the roots of violence and crime, because what you are addressing is their needs. They need a place to be stable. They need a place to feel loved and accepted. They need a place to grow that sees them and cares in them and believes in them. The amount of people who I represented who were in their 40s or their 50s who said, "You are the first person in my life to fight for me," and they thought they were telling me something that was so sweet. And it was sweet to know that, but it was also so heartbreaking to have a grown adult tell you that in their entire life, the only time they ever felt represented was when they were in court. That's incredibly sad. And so to have you all setting up a backbone and a place for people to come, to feel loved, to know that their potential is infinite, to know that they are respected, to know that there is a way for them to exist in this world that doesn't involve them having to live in fear or in harmed way, is so touching for me that I'm so grateful for the work that Mothers for Justice and Equality do. I'm so grateful for the things that you all do. This is not an easy line of work to do because you have to open yourself up and be vulnerable and give yourself that space. And so you are all courageous for opening your hearts in that way to people. You are all change makers. You do so much on a daily basis to make sure that folks aren't living in fear of their neighbors, but also those who are supposed to protect them, those who are supposed to be looking out for them, and those who they have who represent them. And so I can't tell you enough how grateful I am to be here with you, and how much I hope that in my next role, which I'm going to speak that into existence, into my next role, that I'm working with all of you to make sure that mothers and their children and their families feel respected, loved, and honored by these processes, that if harm happens to you, that you feel like we are listening, that we are doing the things to make sure that you are restored, that we are looking at restorative practices, but that we are also engaging folks with programming like this, where we are giving you job training, where we are giving you a place to be, a place to feel like you're at home, a place to feel like somebody is fighting for you before you ever step into a courtroom. And so I am very grateful to all of you for this, because this is what makes a difference. This is what brings us from where we are to where we want to be. And so thank you for letting me be here with you, but more so, thank you for doing this even without anybody at the table. You all got together and you made this happen. I remember Monalisa was calling me about, can we get space at the community center? It didn't work out. And then we got this space, and it's like, well, this is so much better than what we could have got you. So like, just making a way where there is no way. Thank you so much.
All right, so at Mona Lisa's request, I guess we can start moving over towards the blue room. Alrighty, so now we will have the one, the only CEO of Mothers for Justice and Equality. She's going to bring to you she's our keynote speaker. So let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to, are we having a good time? Oh my goodness, I cannot believe, how full I am from having Michelle Wu, but just, I think the biggest part is just being in your presence, right? Just us being together and acknowledging that we've been through something, right? We went through something, right? We're not going to dismiss the fact that since 2019 to 2022, we have been through something. Yeah. The pandemic was not easy. right? Some people lost loved ones. Some people lost their mind, right? Some people lost income. Some people lost property. There was something that was surrendered in that, right? And we have to be grateful at this moment because we're on the other side, right? We're on the other side. So I just wanted to just acknowledge that moment right now, because we have to always operate in this spirit of remembrance and thanksgiving. So let's just celebrate each other right now. I want to also recognize MJE staff, the individuals who pulled this all together, right? And they're all here, and I'm going to embarrass them.
Do it.
Because I would like you all to stand up so we can celebrate MJE. You guys see them on the cameras. And now they put all this together for you. They did this. So I just want to say, there they go. They want to further. Okay, say your name so they can match the name with the face. Okay, go ahead, say your name.
Go ahead. I'm Onika Dixon. I'm one of the family advocates. It's nice to see faces.
Go ahead.
I'm Kyla Farias. I'm the family advocate for health and wellness.
My name is Carly, and I'm the assistant for Monalisa.
I'm Maritha Mosier. I'm a survivor, and I'm also the outreach coordinator and the one that harassed y'all with all the emails.
I harass you back.
I'm Dominique. I work as the chief of programs at MJE.
My name is Vanessa Cordero, and I manage our adult education.
I'm Lynette Johnson, and I'm the front desk receptionist.
Am I missing some people?
Well,
Here. Oh, there you are.
I'm Monique, and hopefully I'll be from the team. I'm an intern.
And I'm Will Smith, I'm the Director of Operations.
That's Big Willie. Willie.
And so now, we want to welcome our board members who are here today. These women came from their jobs and they are just here with us. Eileen's a board member too. Eileen, you guys stand up 3 times. This is Renee. Go ahead, Renee.
Hi everyone, I'm Renee Malade. I'm the Director of Public Schools for Boston Public Schools. I've been a board member for the last 3 years.
Hello everyone, my name is Centoria Grant, and my profession is Associate Director of Public School Partnerships for Harvard University and the Board Treasurer for MJE. Love you all.
And we all know this woman.
And I'm Irene Patterson. I am the Secretary and Clerk of the Board.
I bet y'all didn't know that, right? She keeps a low profile.
Ladies and gentlemen, and Monalisa.
She loves to embarrass me.
What about you? Come on. Come on. She's sitting in the back. Come on in here.
So yeah, why don't you tell us who you are?
You've been with us all the
I
time.
know. Tell us where you are. Yeah.
I'm Amanda Merrick, and I'm a volunteer for Mothers for Justice and Equality.
She's Boston Boston's MC. She has like a comedy whole kind of thing going on, right? Yeah, you got a lot of stuff going on. So I'm trying to. She brings like artists into Boston. Yeah, we want free tickets.
Okay.
Laverne. And Ann is here with us. She has kind of planning, thinking about how she's going to be involved with us, right, Ann? Stand up. Her first encounter with us, and she's totally embarrassed. So, all right, so thank you guys for, I think it's good to, let's get all that out the way. So, good afternoon. And I have the honor of bringing you a message today. And I want to bring you a story today. And I want to bring your attention to something that maybe we have never thought about, right? Or maybe our history as Black women, it has been forgotten, right? So I want to talk to you a little bit today about, it's about 3 mothers, right? And forgive me if I look down at my notes because this was history for me when I was doing my research. And so I wanted to talk about 3 mothers: Alberta King, I want to talk about Louise Little, and I want to talk about Bertus Baldwin. The mothers of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the mother of Malcolm X, and the mother of James Baldwin, right? And how these mothers influenced everything they did. How these mothers, in the time that they reared them as boys, played such a role in what they did, right? And so, although time is not going to give me enough time to properly honor them, right? I'm going to do my best to share with you as much as I can. And I'm going to be taking this out of a book written by Anna McCleaka Tubbs, right? And it will be in our library. It's not there yet, but it will be in our library. And the title of the book is The 3 Mothers, and how the mothers of Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and James Baldwin shaped our nation. It's a trio some call the mothers of the civil rights movement, right? How often have you heard these women's names? Right? How often when they talk about Dr. King, or they talk about Malcolm X, or they talk about James Baldwin, do you hear their mothers' names, right? So, as I was doing my studies, I actually, I was listening to the audio of the book. And the whole book is about these women, their lives, and how they grew up. But it brought me to a place of beginning to think about, why was I in this space? How did I get here from my 30 years in corporate, right? And loving that job, working hard for that job, right? I came in as a teller. Joshua will tell you, I worked my butt off to become the director of community relations, right? How did I get to this space? At some point I said, I lost my nephew and I felt called and compelled to do this work. But after really reading the book, listening to the audio, I began to think to myself, what went on with my mother, with my father, in my history, the seeds that they planted that brought me to this place. I began to think about, the long road to Boston from New Orleans. I started to think about my father and how he decided that he wasn't going to raise his children in the South. Now keep in mind, my father was born in 1918 and my mother was born in 1930. Those of you who know history understand what that was like in the South, right? And they decided, I'm not going to raise my children in the South. I'm going to the North, right? He had a sister here, so he went to Boston, and they drove in a station wagon with 5 kids. Because they wanted something different for their children. And so when I think about, here I am today, right? running a movement, because Mothers for Justice and Equality is a movement. If you don't know it, it is a movement, right? Yeah. Mothers for Justice and Equality is about empowering women to be transformational in their homes, in their communities, and the lives of others. What brought me here? And so when I think about that, I think about that long drive. I think about the whole kind of tenacity that they would say, I'm packing up, I'm going to a place where I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what awaits me, but I know that I'm not going to raise my children in the South, right? Those type of seeds were planted in me, right? Where I thought that this calling, it was time to leave, drop everything, leave that job you love, cry your way out the door, was because I lost my nephew. Yeah, that probably was what ignited it, but the seed was planted in me, yes. Right? The roots were already put there. And I wasn't even born when they took the journey. I wasn't even born then. I was born in Boston. You know what I mean? But that was part of it. And when they got here, they continued to work hard. They continued to work. They said, we're going to own our own home, right? Like, we may have 13 children, 14, but we're going to be homeowners, right? We're gonna continue to do these things. All of those things influenced my life. And I didn't even know it, right? And I didn't even know it. So this particular author, she says that and I want to make sure I give her credit, because she describes her goal is uplifting and empowering women worldwide with the stories of these mothers. She believes learning about historic figures will encourage others to reimagine their abilities to make the world better. Yes. How about that? Right? She says, I want us to look at movements much more realistically, where we don't just focus on individual heroes, but instead we focus on the communities that raise them. How powerful is that? Begin to think about that as we are talking about our children. If we begin to think about the leaders of the movement, and not just as individual men and women, but we begin to think about them in the context of how they were raised, the foundation that they were rooted from. If we begin to teach our sons and daughters that they are much bigger than what they see, that there's not one man or woman that led the movement, that the movement was so much bigger, that there was a sacrifice that was made for you. What are we doing? We're transforming minds. We're transforming communities. We're creating leaders that have a broader understanding of our history and how they are powerful, transformative leaders, right? Yeah. And so when I was listening to the audio, right, and how she was talking about like Louise Little, and she was talking about Alberta King, and she was talking about James Baldwin's mother, and just if you ever have the opportunity to listen, and you realize like the journey that their grandmothers went through, that they went through, and what brought them to this point, and then, oh my goodness, they give birth to these sons. They give birth to these sons, right? They give birth to these sons, and think about this. That what did they from all different parts of the world, right? But they all had this common thread. Even their sons had this common thing. And so although no one ever brought it all together, but this young woman who was the first lady of Stockton, California, that's who she was, right? So even her husband was a transformer, right? And then she gave birth to a son just when she was writing the book. So let me give you a little story about them, right? So Louise Little, Malcolm X's mother, right, was a radical activist. Alberta King was raised in a church and believed that you couldn't have faith without social justice. Bertus Ballman was an incredible writer who felt the need to others to see the light in the darkness. That was before their children was born. Right? You see the alignment between the sons and the mother, right? I don't believe we can actually know these sons without knowing their mothers, right? Can we really know Dr. Martin Luther King without knowing the mother? What do we really know about Dr. Martin Luther King? We know what they tell us. We know what, the sensationalism of him, right? And we know that society decides who we're going to know and who we're not going to know. That our history is limited to what somebody decides we should know, right? And so if we can actually know that these sons, without their mother's story, they have a direct connection to these women, work before they became mothers, after their sons were also well aware of their mother's impact in their lives. All of the mother's sons died before them. How could that be, right? They didn't know each other. They didn't even live in the same states. Some of them weren't even from the same part of the world, right? Each of them went on after their sons to continue to fight for civil rights, none of them receiving any recognition in our history books. Truth be told, before this conversation that we're having today, did you know their names? No. Did you hear, you probably, right, but did you hear people talk about them? No. Do we have an Alberta King Day? No. Do we have a Louise Little Day? No. And these are the mothers that gave birth to those that changed the nation, right? So let me tell you a little bit about Alberta King, the mother of Dr. Martin Luther King, on this eve of Mother's Day. A leader of the Ebenezer Baptist Church before her famous son, served. She was born in Atlanta in 1903 and raised in the city prosperous black community known as Sweet Auburn Historic District. King raised her son with a strong faith in God and inspired his commitment to the nonviolent resistance. I thought he got it from Gandhi. I'm telling you the truth. That's what history said. Didn't it say that?
Yeah, it does.
It said that.
Yeah.
His mother. He got it from his mother. Right? Nobody ever told us that. Her own parents also led the congregation of Ebenezer Baptist Church before her. She was an incredible social justice advocate who believed faith and social justice should be intertwined. Louise Little, the mother of Malcolm X. I saw the movie. I read the book. And I don't remember her name being mentioned. Was an activist. Her deep commitment to black independence, black pride, and Pan-Africanism is reflected in her son's life work. Born in Grenada in the late 19th century, Little never knew her father and was raised by a strong female household with mother, grandmother, and aunts. She was an early follower of Marcus Garvey, right? Black liberation movement. What do we know about Malcolm X? The Black liberation movement, right? Which took root in her son's own activism. Like Alberta King, a teacher, Little was highly educated and used her skills to advantage of herself and others. She actually writes for the Negro World newspaper. She believes that you should stand up for your self-worth and be treated with dignity that you deserve. Right? Emma Baldwin, who went by the first name Bertus, who also a writer who inspired literacy, poetic and theoretical work in her son. Famed civil rights writer James Baldwin. Bernice Baldwin began expressing herself through writings and poetry from a young age, dealing with grief of her mother's death during childbirth. James Baldwin was born in New York City in 1924 amid the flourishing Harlem Renaissance. Believed she helped others through their darkness, through their own pain, through her writings. She would give them letters to help them see the world differently, to find more healing, to find more progress. It's no coincidence that her son becomes the famous writer James Baldwin, who calls himself the witness to the power of light. These mothers did not, as we know it, have these conversations with their son. Right? History doesn't say that, and neither did the writer say in her book when she did her research. But mothers are the influencers. We're silent partners, right?
Yeah.
How many times, and I mean, you guys all know that sometimes we don't even have to say nothing when the child did something wrong. What do? We just give them a look. We just give them a look. Sometimes when it gets real bad, we just go silent. And everybody knows when we quiet, right? When we're in this little issue and it's the back and forward, we don't keep arguing. We just stop talking. And we just sit still and we just wait, right? Because we know that you better know that you in a good place when I'm talking. When I stop talking, something's getting ready to happen. And so that's what they did. But we didn't know this, right? We didn't know the history. All we knew was the sons, but we didn't know the mother. We didn't know the mother's mother, right? So while these women lived inspiring lives, they also met tragic ends, right? Alberta King was assassinated in her church in 1974. While playing the organ during Sunday services, she served as a source of strength to her family and community after her son Martin's assassination, right? And after the death of her son under another son, it was, right? Under mysterious circumstances shortly after she lost Martin, right? Louise Little, a few years after her husband died in a suspicious car accident, it is noted that somehow a white male doctor diagnosed her with dementia and committed her to a mental health institution against her will, and her children were placed in foster care.
So sad.
And she stayed there for years, right? The most surprising part of reading the book was how obvious connections were between the mothers and the son. Some say their stories were erased intentionally to keep our history from truly being known, right? Some say it's another way of dehumanizing Black women, right? That it's another way of not giving Black women true credit for who they are, right? What we see is in the stories of the mother and the son is this generational love, right? We see this love being passed down from the son to the mother, right? And then the mother loses her son, And she continues with the fight until they come under the same, right, as the mother. And before reading the book, I had heard that Dr. King's mother was assassinated. And when I heard it, I literally didn't believe it, because all these years, no one ever said it. How could that not be, right? How could you not talk about that? But no one ever said it, right? And I had to literally go and do my research, and then I was thinking to myself, what would I say on the eve of Mother's Day to these mothers who had been in a pandemic, and who knows what we've all been going through. I know I got my story. I got my badge. I'm gonna tell you the truth. What would I say to them that would even measure up to us coming out of a pandemic? What could you say, right? I don't want to talk about just any old thing. I want to talk about truth. I want to talk about those that inspired us and survived before us. I need something to give me some juice, right? And so I just started to think to myself, what's out there? And I came across the story of the three mothers. And I said, I have to read this book. I have to listen to this. And like I said, I can only give you a little of it because I don't have the time, right? But if we only had the time to study Mrs. Little's story of when she was in Grenada and how she came up during the time of slavery, and how her father and her mother and her mother's mother and how they fought in the revolution. If we had more time, we could talk about Bernice King and her father and her mother and how they grew up in the part of Georgia where the Ku Klux Klan was birthed, and how because a white woman was found murdered, the whole town was burned. And 3 young men were taken into custody and lynched. If we had more time, right, we could learn more about James Baldwin's mother and her journey, right? But we don't have the time, but we do appreciate what we do know, because what we're left with is our minds are now open for us to go and do more research. Right? We have the seed now for us to take and plant it, right? And water it and begin to tell the story to our daughters, right? And begin to have our daughters repeat it back, right? How many times you do that? Like you tell somebody, can you just repeat it back to me? I just got to make sure you got it, right? We have the seed. We have the information now, right, of these 3 mothers. And I'll tell you, I was a little nervous about it, not because I was speaking in front of you, who I feel like we're all family, but because I had the opportunity to talk about these women, right, who gave birth to sons that changed the world for the better. And a history that was hidden. It was hidden from us, right? Why? What else are we missing?
Yes, so true. What
What
was
else?
the name of your mother?
My mother?
What was your mother's name?
My mother's name was Ruby Lee Smith.
And your dad?
Earl Smith.
Thank you.
That was thank you. Thank you. That's right. Yes, that was my mother's name. And my grandmother's name was Priscilla Lee. And her husband's name was Harmis. And my mother used to tell me, which I never met, but she used to say, you know, your great grandfather was a Frenchman, and we spoke patois. And I was like, what in the world is that? Right? And I was trying to figure out French. Was we Haitian? Was we like, no. In New Orleans, there was this whole movement.
Yes. So true.
Right? And there was this other dialect.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? Now, my mother has passed, and at the time when she was dropping all that, I wasn't paying attention. You know, I was like, oh. But she was dropping those seeds, right? She was dropping those seeds. And I believe that she knew, right, that although I loved being the banker, right, I loved that world, but there was something else that they prepared me for, right? There was something else that I needed to do, and I believe these mothers, right, they knew when they looked at their little boys and they would watch them grow and play and be mischievous, they knew there's something bigger that you have to do. Not just for yourself, but for those that came behind you, for those that came behind me, for those that are going to come before you, so that Monalisa and all of her sisters can get in a room and say, we just brought us a house to have our conversations in. we just call the mayor and she shows up, that they paved the way for us to be in power. I don't believe anything that happens to us has happened by accident. Amen. I don't believe that the fact that I was led to find out more about these three mothers was by accident. Amen. I don't believe the fact that I came to this podium and told you about it was by accident. That there's something more that we are to do with that information, right? We're coming out of a season, a hard season. And maybe we are supposed to remember that they went through numerous pandemics, right? That what we went through wasn't half of what they went through, right? And it was so funny because when I think about that, and I think about my mother with her 14 kids and me with my 3, and how hard it is for me with the 3 and for her with the 14, seemed like there was never a problem. Oh my gosh, yeah. They're probably like, look at our daughters. Look at our daughters, birthing sons. Look at our daughters. You know, look at them, right? And they think they got trouble. They ain't seeing trouble, right? But they gave us something, right? They left us something. And I'm thankful for this author, which I'm going to reach out to her and ask her to come to our national conference. I am thankful for this young woman who wrote the book and who told the story. And I'm just like hoping that it'll be a movie. I'm like, this needs to be a movie. We got so many movies of Malcolm X. We got so many movies of James Baldwin. We got so many movies of Dr. King. Can I see a movie of his mother? Yes. I want to see, I mean, you can even make it fictional. I just want to see the 3 of them moving together. I want to see if you put them in a room together, what would the conversation have been like? Right? What would that conversation have been like? Right? And so with that, you know, I'll leave you with your minds wide open. The name of the book, and the name of the book, it's called The Three Mothers. And it's by the author, I have it in my notes. We'll send out a text. Okay. We'll send out a message. Yes, it's called it's called The Three Mothers, How the Mothers of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and James Baldwin Shaped the Nation. I don't know any of you who, I don't know if you always, I listened to my first audio because I was so busy and I wanted to get through the book. If you get the audio, it's unbelievable. It's 6 hours. But I'm telling you, it's not like anything I have heard. But I will read the book as well. But it's a powerful story that we as Black women have not been told about our history. So thank you all, and I hope I left you with something.